everybody. This is Perch, and this viewer question goes along a little bit with the video I posted recently titled "Why Make Life Hard on Yourself?" And I want to stress I'm reading a lot of comments, and people get it, and and everything else, but in many cases I'm watching a bunch of people overthink a little bit of what I put there. When I mean why make life hard on yourself, with creative fields it's always a little bit of a tougher question because sometimes the journey, so to speak, the effort and the struggle helps the creative process along. If you're not in the creative field, you probably are rolling your eyes at that sentiment and everything else, but it is true. It's to master something often takes commitment. It takes struggle. One of the things that I liked best this year was Barry Windsor Smith and his title Monsters. And if you look at Smith's work and his career and everything he's done, this is a man who worked very hard to master his craft. Often at struggle, often not being paid as much as he should have. But when you look at the work, it's clearly worth the effort. There's somebody who didn't make life easy on themselves. By contrast, Eric Larson's advice from the other day of hey, make life easy on yourself. Just ink for an hour or two, and then you're done. And screw it. Whatever happens, happens. That definitely is making life easier for yourself, but in a short term kind of junk food way. You don't build up the kind of career that Smith has. You don't build up the portfolio, the longevity, the asking power. So you kind of always stay at this lower level. But this question is it talks about why choices are made. And I think it does go into, for the publishers anyway, why make life difficult for yourself? Is the struggle that you're putting in ultimately going to pay off or not? So that's the point of view I'm coming into this. So here's the question. Hey, Perch, it's years after Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote his first Marvel book, and I'm still confused by the decision to even hire him in the first place. Coates' career was in large part centered around politics, such that, in my opinion, putting him on Cap would be like DC putting Tucker Carlson on Superman. And wouldn't that be a reach? Hang on a second. Let's all pause for a minute. What would a Tucker Carlson Superman look like? That would, well, anyway, I'm still blown away by the fact that Ronald Reagan really wanted to create, write, and draw comics. That was one of his passions as a teen, was that he wanted to work in comics. Ronald Reagan. I'd like you to imagine for the moment Ronald Reagan had foregone politics and gone and acting and gone in the direction of comic books. Anyway, so the question continues. It just makes no sense to me and seems that doing something like that suggests the publisher either expects their readers to be uninformed on who Coates is and ignorant to his messaging, which is insulting, or that they expect their readers to agree with Coates' worldview, which is naive. Both of these suggest poor judgment at Marvel. Why would such a decision even be made? It immediately puts a kind of cap on your sales because anyone who knows Coates is and disagrees will immediately jump ship, which seems reflected by the sales on his run. I disagree a little bit with that, but I'll explain why in a minute. Do you think that the comic companies will make this decision ever again in the near future, or is there any evidence they want to shift away from getting talent from the world of politics? All right, so a number of things that I disagree with a little bit. So interesting, good question. Good comments. I disagree with some of the points made, but you'll not in a mean way. You'll understand. First, if I was describing Coates, I wouldn't describe him as a political writer as much as a social agenda or social topic writer. Yes, he does a lot of politics as well, but he also does a lot of social commentary. He's very deep into all of that. Now, depending on your definition of politics, that could all be politics, but that's definitely who he is. And I also think, as I mentioned earlier, I don't think that people who knew Coates, like here's the crazy part. Captain America, a title which is going to sell in today's market, almost no matter who's on that book, between hopefully 50,000 higher in sales and hopefully around 70. That's where you want to be. That'd be great, especially for a character that's being represented in the movies right now, and in theory has a lot of upside. So that's where you want to be. Now Captain America was not there. I think it was, as I recall, Captain America was hovering around 30 to 40, kind of in that range, maybe lower in some cases. They abandoned putting name and quote, expensive artists on it fairly early. You had the title launched with Coates, and Lintel Francis Yu was on it, the Kubert was on it, and then it was a number of relatively cheaper, no-name artists. One of which reached out to me, by the way, and said, "Hey, I enjoy your show, even though you absolutely reamed my art on Captain America. I felt terrible because the guy was really nice." He's like, I look back on it now and I realize I didn't do the best job I could have done. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know, it felt bad. Anyway, I'm doubting many people saw Coates' name be put on the book and went, nope, I'm familiar with his work on The Atlantic. I'm not going to buy that. The reason why sales tanked is because ultimately the story wasn't any good. The art was not compelling, and it wasn't a book that people wanted to buy. It's in many ways, I don't think Coates had anything to do with that, other than he had everything to do with it because he was the one writing the book. Meaning, I don't think his past and his background had much to do with the poor sales. I think the fact that it was an absolutely unreadable nightmare of a book had a lot to do with the sales. And that's your earlier comment, which I do agree with. It expects the readers to be uninformed on who Coates is and ignorant to his messaging. That's probably true of most people, and this is where, if you knew who Coates was, and especially if you were disgusted by some of the things he said or says, and Coates is very much I don't know, I don't want to use the word race hustler, but it starts to feel like that at times. He's very much front and center with a lot of these topics. Now, if you like Coates, you're probably very offended by what I just said. So I don't know. I don't feel like that's the best way to describe Coates. I'm not sure how you describe Coates. He's a writer for The Atlantic. He very much writes social and politically charged things, usually around race, and that's his deal. That's his brand. And I think that the majority of people coming to the comic shop to collect Captain America have no idea what this is, no idea who that is, and I say that in part because Coates doesn't have a massive following, and The Atlantic, as much as if you know that exists, then you're very aware of him. But a lot of people do not know The Atlantic exists. The Atlantic is kind of hovering on not being financially sustainable. I mean, I don't think a lot of people came in knowing who Coates was. So I think they're uninformed. Now, the funny part is, with the amount of negatives in his background, Coates is put in a pretty tough situation, meaning he's got to write such a killer Captain America story that people will flock to it. And even if they become aware of kind of some of his writings, some of his very polarizing writings, that they are willing to overlook it because the story is just that damn good. And of course, he was not able to deliver on that. Here's the funny part about Coates' Captain America. I've not met anyone who says that that run was a good run, including people who are big fans of Coates. There's a handful of people who come to my channel who do like his writing, whenever I talk about him, they're like, oh, you're racist. They're very much fans of him. But even those people do not defend the comic. Many of them say, you shouldn't be picking on Coates. He's a good guy. It's racist to pick on him. The comic wasn't very good. Why are you picking on him? It's like everybody says this, including the people who like him, don't think the comic was very good. So I mean, what can you do with that? If you're coming in as a polarizing figure, if you're coming in with some baggage, and then you write a book that doesn't manage to, get people to look past that baggage, when they become aware of it, then you're kind of screwed. And that's what happened with this title. The last bit of the question, then I'll talk more broadly, although I'm still kind of hung up on what would a Tucker Carlson Superman look like? I honestly, I can't even imagine what that would look like. I mean, if it was a Sean Hannity Superman, I'm picturing Superman flying around just punching, Hillary Clinton every chance he could get. But I mean, what would Tucker Carlson's Superman look like? I don't know. Anyway, I'm trying to get that image out of my head. The last question in the mail: do I think comic companies will make this decision again in the near future? Yes, 100% yes, because this gets to why was Coates hired in the first place. Well, a lot of the reason was Coates had expressed some interest in superheroes many years ago, before Marvel ever touched him. He expressed some liking of superheroes, and a lot of people who are of that generation will talk about liking Superman, liking Batman, liking Spider-Man. Like, I grew up with this kind of stuff. Especially a lot of writers who are in their, late 20s, 30s, early 40s, that generation, comic books were very popular because that generation grew up with comic books in the late 70s, 80s, and 90s. And the 80s were killer for comics. A lot of people were into comics. A lot of people read comics, got excited about them, decided they wanted to be in comics, write comics. And so a lot of people express those desires. Now, a lot of people at Marvel, in this case, but DC is the same, they read The Atlantic. They like that writing. They're of that political persuasion. And so if you're an editor at Marvel, and you are reading The Atlantic and you're a big fan of Coates, and you see an interview where Coates says he likes superheroes, you put two and two together and you're like, well, let's get Coates to write a comic. He's a big fan of comics, so that's great. He already knows his characters and everything else, so he'll probably take the job. And I love this guy, and he's very topical. He's written some big things, so everybody, this is the right person to put on the book. That's how the editors are thinking today. They're looking into what they like. In this case, articles in The Atlantic. Then they're matching that up with somebody who expresses some vague interest in comics, and there you go. That's how he gets onto the book. I do not believe that the editors at Marvel are like, you know what? We've got a lot of conservative religious readers of comics, and the best way to fuck those people? Let's get the most, polarizing, kind of angry writer, and he's black too, so that's going to offend all the racists. Let's get him onto this book, and we're just going to tank the sales because screw those readers. They're not, again, I know some of you very much believe that is what's going on. But again, I argue, Occam's razor, it's much dumber than that. It's literally, I'm reading an article, I like this guy. This guy says he likes Spider-Man. Let's see if he'll write something for Spider-Man. In many cases, as it turns out, even if you're a big name, writing for The Atlantic doesn't pay amazingly well. And a job at Marvel, which is a inroad to a job at Disney, is where you could eventually get a TV credit or do something else. That's attractive. That's a win-win for everyone. And that's how this stuff gets done. And you're going to see more of it happen. It's not going to end because in many cases, the editors who are looking at the sales numbers of Captain America, even if they've even seen those numbers, which to my absolute horror and disbelief, many have not. The amount of editors who do not seem aware of the sales on their own books is shocking and striking to me, but okay, whatever. Either that or they're master liars. I mean, there's a group editor who is who often tells the writers on their book that they are selling just numbers that don't line up with anything. Like, even Comicron estimates don't come close to the numbers that this guy says. So either he is wildly misinformed about what his own books are doing, or he is just lying out of his teeth for reasons that are unknown. And the writers are buying it despite evidence to the contrary for, again, more reasons unknown. I have no idea. Anyway, at Marvel, they don't look at the Ta-Nehisi Coates experiment as a failure. They look at it as I had a job and I needed a writer and I got to work with somebody that I like from The Atlantic, and moving on to the next one. They don't view these things in terms of, hey, we drove up sales. Hey, we drove down sales. We should do something different next time. They don't view it that way. There's the business of comics is not often run like a business where they do these kinds of postmortems on sales. They don't sit around and go, you know what? We were down 10% last month, so let's figure out how we get things up 20% so we can have an up year. They don't do things like that. The closest it comes is like, hey, our sales are lagging a little bit. Let's get some other events and put some more volume of comics out there. Let's just do more, and that will make up the numbers because we're doing more. That's as elaborate as it gets. I wish what I would like to see happen is that writers who are coming in to do comics are, one, vetted a lot more. I think, again, I would stomach a Ta-Nehisi Coates Captain America, despite his very polarizing views. And if you listen to enough of my videos, I would rather have nobody with polarizing views on these comics. Tucker Carlson or Ta-Nehisi Coates. Anyway, so it's Tucker Carlson Superman. I'm just is he flying? Or I mean, I am picturing that the thing that cracks me up about Tucker Carlson is that when his guest is talking, the expression on his face, Tucker gets it. He has the expressions are hilarious. Anyway, sorry. I would like to see these writers vetted. I would like to see them have good pitches, and then I would like to see them put on books for longer so they have a chance to tell their stories. But it should be story driven, not celebrity driven, not name driven. I mean, what celebrity-ish writer has ever done well at the comic company? Have any of them? I'm trying to think of any successes that have come out where they hired somebody to do a job and it was it was a good decision, like J.J. Abrams and Son, Spider-Man. That was I would just love to see. Are there any? It just doesn't tend to work out. All right, that's enough on that. Great question. Thanks for writing, and thanks for listening.